The history of Samhain dates back to ages past, all the way to the original Gaelic calendar. It's actually one of the 4 main festivals on the Gaelic calendar itself. And like I mentioned before, it marks the end of fall and the beginning of winter. It's always been seen as this liminal time period where the veil between worlds is at its thinnest. According to Irish mythology, Samhain is a time where the doors actually physically open between this world and the other world. And it's a time similar to what I just mentioned, where otherworldly beings, spirits, ancestors, loved ones that have passed before are able to move back and forth through this realm and the next.
This lovely loaf that you see here is BAIRÍN, Irish tea bread, or BARMBRACK. Os Gaeilge, BAIRÍN means speckled bread, and it gets its name because of the speckled appearance of the fruit throughout the bread. There is so much tradition, history, and folklore attached to this loaf, which is typically made around Halloween time and is often a precursor to the traditional Irish Christmas cake. In Ireland, the tradition has been to add things to your bread. For example, the most common one is to add a ring to your loaf wrapped up in a bit of parchment paper, and the person who gets the ring is said to marry within the year. But adding a coin to represent wealth or cloth to represent poverty has fallen away a lot and out of practice in recent years. So now we are left with the tradition of the ring. And in a lot of shop bought bracks, you will have that boring brac ring that everybody will fight for.
Almost always, this begins by somebody explaining the legend, people deciding to try it, and it ends with somebody screaming and getting everybody to freak out.
Yeah, and everyone gets giddy and giggly and everything. And it's really just an optical illusion.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even know there was an optical illusion part of this. I thought it was all just the legend, getting everybody spooked, and then somebody shouts. But man, reading the legend on this, there's some weird Freudian stuff to the background of this.
Yes. One of the earliest things that they found that might be a predecessor to this was in the Victorian era, women would walk up a staircase backwards holding a candle, and once they got up to their parlor or whatever, where the standing mirror, much like this was, they would turn around and look into the mirror, and they were supposed to see the face of whoever they were to marry.
What? That's creepy. Well, and I guess also the idea of the anticipation and waiting probably factors in as well.
If you want to add a historical twist to your Halloween celebrations, try carving a turnip instead of a pumpkin. Carving a turnip into a lantern to ward off evil spirits has been an established tradition for hundreds of years, long before pumpkin carving became popular. The tradition is thought to be rooted in an Irish folktale about a man named Jack who made a deal with the devil to protect his soul. When he died, his soul had no resting place, so he was cursed to wander the earth for eternity. To light his way, he had only a lantern made from a hollowed-out turnip lit by a glowing coal.
Other Halloween pastimes included attempting to predict the future. One tradition was to peel an apple in one long strip, then toss the peel over your shoulder. The belief was that the peel would land in the shape of a letter representing the name of your future spouse.
In Germany, the 1st of November is traditionally celebrated far more intensely than 31st October. When November rolls around, Germans observe All Saints' Day, during which they remember loved ones that have died and sing songs while gathered at cemeteries. Here they place lit candles or lamps on graves of relatives and decorate them with flowers or fir branches. Commonly, the observation and celebration of All Saints' Day starts on the evening of 31st October. However, this doesn't mean that Germany doesn't also get into the Halloween spirit. While keeping their loved ones in remembrance, families hide their knives on Halloween night. This is to ensure that the souls of the returning family and friends, and perhaps others, don't accidentally cut themselves when they make their brief return to the land of the living.
The Hungry Ghost Festival, also known as 中元节, is a festival celebrated by most Taoist and Buddhist believers. This festival is held on the 7th month of the lunar calendar each year. It is believed that during this month, the gates of hell is open, so spirits from the netherworld are free to roam the living realm for food and entertainment. For those who observe this festival, we must pay tribute to wandering spirits, so that these homeless souls do not intrude on our lives and bring misfortune. The whole idea of these offerings is to appease the spirits and ward off any bad luck. Believers would normally offer food, drinks, prayers, and burn joss paper money or hell money to help spirits live comfortably in the afterlife.
Devil's Night is the night before Halloween every year. Mainly in Detroit. I think it's kind of a Detroit thing. We're kind of funny about things like that. It's a time for kids to kind of like go out and do mischievous kind of pranks. Toilet paper trees, or toilet paper house, or soap your windows, or little stupid things like that. In the 70s and the 90s in particular, it got really bad to the point where there were people making dumpster fires and lighting abandoned buildings on fire, and cars, and firebombing houses. It got really bad. I remember one time in the 90s, there were like about 180 fires across the city. If you had like any kind of a skyline view or something, like the whole city looked like it was on fire, and it was crazy. And it got to the point where the city declared it to never be called Devil's Night again. They wanted it to be called Angel's Night, which seemed kind of silly at the time, but it was a good idea because something needed to be done about that. So a lot of people would be going out in their citizen patrols, their neighborhood watches, with walkie-talkies, keeping an eye on the whole city and the neighborhood to make sure that it was kind of safe, and to make sure none of the big, really excessive mischief was going on. So.
Day of the Dead has nothing to do with Halloween. It's called Día de los Muertos. Today, in Mexico, families celebrate Día de los Muertos by preparing for the return of their loved ones. Día de los Muertos wouldn't exist without the ofrenda, or the offering. It's a collection of things placed on an altar to remember our loved ones who have passed away. Back at home, the ofrenda is created to welcome the spirits back. Food plays a huge role in helping pay respect to loved ones. A lot of the traditional food and drink on Día de los Muertos comes from a blend of Spanish and indigenous beliefs and practices. A common food item is pan de muerto, my personal favorite, or bread of the dead. It's a sweet and eggy bread shaped into people, animals, bones, and skulls. The sweet smell is said to help the dead find their family.